this demonstration, we are going to learn how do we perform some basic Git configuration and some basic operations when you are actually setting up the Git. Now, whenever you have any Git, and as you understand that Git init is the command which is used to initialize any repository. Now, pretty much when you initialize any repository, right? So you have something called .git. Now, this is a very important file when you are working on the Git management system. And if you open Git, you can see there are a couple of files where exactly your metadata gets stored. And one of the important configuration file that you need to understand is config. Let's go ahead and open with our notepad and see how exactly our config file looks like. You can see there is a core, there is repository format version, file mode false, and the one thing that you need to be very important is remote origin, and this is the URL. That means whenever I do a git push -u origin master, that means I'm going to put this in this repository. Okay, now the branch is also the master, and remote equals to origin. You can see that remote equals to origin, and then you have to do the configuration here. Now this is a very local configuration. Now what we are going to do is we are going to do some manipulation in the local. Before I do that, let me go ahead and show you a sample change and then go back how it will be performed. Go here, then do git status. There is no changes. Now you can also see I have .svn index here, and I got the .svn index, two files. Now let me go ahead and create a file here. I say that extra file.txt. Now I have an extra file. Let's go here and do the git status, then add it to the index. Now git commit, as we know. Now do the git push origin master. This is what we generally do. You observe it, it is the origin, and we put the master. Now what it's going to do, it is going to update the remote repository, and you go to the remote repository and refresh it, and you can see the extra file is here. Now what we are going to do is we are actually going to look it here. The remote repository is here, updated, and the local repository git status. Now let us do some configuration change. Go here, go to your .git, do the configuration. Now for example, I want to open this config file with a notepad. Now you can see I'm replacing origin. Okay, I want to replace origin with XYZ ABC. Replace all. Now you can see XYZ ABC is pretty much changed. Now let me save this configuration file. Okay, now do some changes. Let's go ahead and add a new file here. File 2. Now let me add it. Let me do a commit. Now if you do git push origin master, it will not work. Now see git push XYZ ABC master. That XYZ ABC will tell which remote repository it is. Now you can see it worked. Let us go ahead and check whether the file 2 got added here. You see the file 2 are added. Now what is the importance of this file is this actually tells which repository it should go. I can have hundreds of repositories like this. For example, I can configure remote equals to this. Okay, I can put remote equals to something else. That's absolutely possible. Or I can go ahead and create something like this. I can go ahead and create another one. Tell this is as new repo, and then point it to a different repository. That's absolutely possible and you will be able to work with it. Now, this is one important configuration that everyone has to understand. Now, let us go ahead and learn how do we do the Git configuration local management. For example, if I have to do a Git configuration from a command line locally, and when I say locally, it is only applicable to this repository. If I go to a different repository, these configurations are not applicable. For example, for this repository, I want to assign an email. Now, for example, I want to assign xyzabc.com or maybe @gmail.com. This is the email that I want to use. Now, if you go back to your configuration gets updated and you can see the user email. I hope that was clear. Now, I can also put a name. Or I can go ahead and change it from the configuration. And if I want, I can actually put a username also. Sometimes name is different, username may be different. For example, XYZ ABC user. Now this can be of different parameters. It's up to the end user how they would like to put it. Now in case if I want a browser configuration, I can go ahead and put a browser configuration also. That means this browser will only work here. Browser equals to. So these are all important factors when we actually do a CI/CD pipeline. That's your DevOps. Now, if I want to change the color code, I can go ahead and change the color code. If I want a branch to code it in a different way, current branch will look like maybe yellow, bold. Then local branch will look like green, bold. Maybe a remote branch will look like cyan, bold. Let's go ahead and apply this configuration and see how it behaves. Now you can see here. Now you can see it is in yellow color because we have put it as in yellow color, the current branch. Now let us go ahead and see all the branches. Now you can see all the branches that are in the remote. So yeah. Now any local branch will be shown as green. Let us go ahead and create a branch locally. Now let us see the branches. Now you can see the local branch is in green color based on the configuration that we have written here. Now you can fully control the functionality of the entire Git from this configuration file, and this configuration file plays a major role in understanding the repository and its configuration and necessary dependencies, and this is something which we cannot go ahead and change anything. Now there is another file which is very important called as .git ignore. Now in this moment I don't have a .git ignore file. Now let us go ahead and create one ignore file. I am using a nano editor. See, because I am on Windows, I cannot use dot files. So I am using a technique here from the bash shell. So I go ahead and create .git ignore. This is very important. Now .git ignore file is very important if you want to ignore some files committing into your remote repositories, or if you want to ignore, for example, in this case, I want to ignore the .svn files. Just save it and you can go back. It gets created. Okay, so it's going to ignore the .svn files. Now what I will do is when I ignore the files, let me go ahead and create one more branch. Git branch test 100. I'm just taking sample branch. Okay, let's go ahead and see git branch. Now let me switch to git test 100. Git checkout your test 100. Now git status, just add a file. Now look at the git status. Now do a git add, git commit, .git ignore fine, cool.txt file added for demo. Let me clear the screen. Now git status. Now let's push the. Now do you think it will work? No, we have changed the origin, so the origin has to be changed. Now everything is up to date. Okay, now we have only pushed the master branch. However, we need to push test 100 branch to the remote. Now once we push it, let's go back to our remote repository, refresh it. At this moment I don't have. Yes, my test 100 branch is reflecting. Let's go ahead and refresh and switch from master to test 100. And you can see in the master branch I have .svn. Let's go ahead and go to the test 100 and you can still see .svn. You know why? Because the .git ignore was added, okay, after the svn is created. So it's always better, you need to go ahead and create it after that. That means first .git ignore should be there, and after that only you have to add a different file. And my suggestion is go back and do this lab as a practice, and I'm sure you will understand it and you will really appreciate the importance of .git ignore file. I hope it was clear. Go ahead and do as much as practice as possible. Listen to the lessons couple of times. That will help you to understand the concepts and make your life easy. See you in the next demonstration and the module.